Rumors are flying around the hockey world, and that's why you're tapped into a brand new episode of your source for hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Happy Friday, everybody. We're breaking down everything you need to know, including Game 2 tee-up, Panthers and Rangers. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back inside the lab to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am privileged to be joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. And on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Huge, massive shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. We see and appreciate you. Make sure you smash that 5-star review and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, while we're at it, Steele, you might as well check out our brand new Instagram account, Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod. We're putting up content every single day. Our bets. Steele, speaking of which, we're getting there. The end of the episode, I got a same-game parlay ready to go that I know you're going to love. Predators. They're out there in the rumors, Steele. So is Mitch Marner. There's a Ryan McDonagh trade. We're not even getting to the tee-up of Game 2, Rangers-Panthers. I got some angles that I saw in Game 1 I want to talk to you about. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Steele, I swear down, I'm done now. Over to you, my friend, because look, the Ryan McDonagh trade at the surface isn't huge, but now this Nashville Predators team has $26 million in cap space, and Mitch Marner's name's being thrown out there. What's your take on this situation, and do you think Mitch would be a fit as a Nashville Predator? I can't believe we're already here. The summer hasn't even started yet.
Yeah, well, it's definitely in the conversation, and there are a lot of teams that have apparently been calling the Toronto Maple Leafs, wanting to make a trade for Mitch Marner, or at least interested in the possibility of a trade for Mitch Marner. And the Nashville Predators seem to be one of those teams. Again, Juuse Saros has been on that trade rumor mill over the last few seasons. They have a great goaltender coming up in Askarov. So this team seems to be a good fit for, what both teams really need right now. And the Nashville Predators need a superstar forward who can pass the puck, who can be creative in the offensive zone. And I think it would be a perfect fit with Filip Forsberg and returning with Ryan O'Reilly as well on that top line. So
top line would be nice.
I'm going to break down the Ryan McDonagh trade back to Tampa Bay. So Nashville, they receive a 2024 7th round pick, as well as a 2025 second round pick. And in return, the Tampa Bay Lightning receive Ryan McDonagh and a 2024 4th round pick, which was given from Edmonton in a trade previously to Nashville. Yep. But Ryan McDonagh returns to Tampa Bay. He won 2 Stanley Cups with them in 2020 and 2021. He was there for 5 seasons as well. I think it's going to be a great fit for both Ryan McDonagh and obviously the Nashville Predators receive multiple picks, which they already seem to have an abundance of at this point.
Yes.
And that's why I believe a Mitch Marner to Nashville trade would be perfect for the Toronto Maple Leafs, because there's just so much the Toronto Maple Leafs can get in return from the Nashville Predators that the Predators have an abundance of. They could go out and get Juuse Saros. They could go out and get a couple of blue liners. I really like Alexander Carrier. They could go out and get some top end draft picks, first round, second round, whatever it is. Obviously, you're going to have to. I'm not going to break it down to the full trade because I don't know exactly what each team is going to want.
Yeah, it's early as well, so there's lots to come. But it's making sense.
It's making sense. And like I said before, I think it would be a perfect fit on that top line with Filip Forsberg right now, because you can't afford to waste the next 3-4 seasons of Filip Forsberg and Roman Josi and Ryan O'Reilly and Gustav Nyquist's career. I know Gustav Nyquist just had a 75-point career season, but especially
34.
Filip Forsberg and Roman Josi, those guys you cannot afford to waste their career right now, especially after the season Filip Forsberg just had of 90-plus points. So, I mean, I think they need to they definitely need to make a trade for a superstar forward, and Mitch Marner would be a great fit in my opinion.
The core is aging. That's a fact. Obviously, with McDonagh being moved, we're looking at the Nashville Predators. This Mitch Marner situation, where there's smoke, there's fire. Obviously, there's people out there in the media coming out and saying there's nothing to it yet because of how early, hockey is still being played. However, though, Steele, everything that you brought up holds water. And when you look at that aging core, and the Nashville Predators, for all intents and purposes, want to re-sign Juuse Saros, but if they can't get it done, if it looks like he wants more money or whatever the situation is, that's when you start to look at this even closer. And of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs would love to land Saros. Who wouldn't? There's going to be a lot of teams circling the wagon. I think the conversation can just shift right into, the Nashville Predators are going to be looking to make a splash just because of all the reasons that we just mentioned. And they're knocking on the doorstep. They're already a playoff caliber team. So if you're looking at them going out to add what is obviously that big missing piece, kind of like the Minnesota Wild for a number of years, Steele, just looking for that extra stud, like Kaprizov can't do it on his own. I think it's a very similar situation with the Nashville Predators. They're just looking for that real big gun. But let's translate this into Mitchie's fantasy value next year very quickly. And then let's talk about, I do want to pick your brain quickly on all these coaching hires. Berube, Sheldon, Keefe very quickly after the break, as well as Panthers and Rangers, of course. Same game parlays coming up for tonight. But Mitch's value is intriguing here, Steele, because when you look at his regular season numbers, we're not going to talk about postseason Mitch. Talk about fantasy Mitch. This is 90, 100-point caliber player. He is a very elite fantasy piece, but I'm intrigued. If he goes away from the big guns of the Toronto Maple Leafs, we know that he is besties with all those guys in there, Matthews and otherwise. Does his value go down a bit, Steele? I'm a little bit curious as to what it might do. Going into the Nashville Predators, a team that we know hangs its hat, Barry Trotz and otherwise, on defense first kind of hockey.
I don't think it goes down. I don't think it takes a dip. And it's for the exact same reason as my expectations for Jake Guentzel going to Carolina. He's still going to be playing with some top-notch players. And obviously the caliber of players in Carolina is a little bit different than the caliber of players in Nashville. But Mitch Marner is still a very talented, very skilled, and very creative individual, and especially a top-notch forward fantasy-wise in the NHL in the regular season.
Regular season, it's hard to poke holes in Mitch's game at any end of the rink. He's an all-star, and it just sucks that he can't get it done in the postseason. We have to talk about these played-out narratives.
Exactly. And again, we're talking regular season fantasy value right now. And again, so if he goes over to Nashville, he's still going to be getting his own. He's still a creative, skilled individual who can create his own space for himself and get his points when he needs to. But it's not just going to be him. Again, he's going to be playing with Philip Forsberg, who we all thought was going to take a dip this season, and he actually improved. He inclined. So for that reason, it's again going back to the just the comparison of Jake Guentzel going to Carolina. Oh, he's not going to be playing with Sidney Crosby anymore. Yeah, but he's playing with Sebastian Aho. He's playing with Seth Jarvis. He's playing with Andrei Svechnikov. You could do the same thing with Nashville, and especially some of those young players who we actually like their fantasy value. Obviously over the next 2 seasons. Yep. I think Mitch Marner, if he were to be traded to Nashville, his fantasy value is going to be fine. Maybe it takes a dip on his ADP, but regardless, he's going to continue to get his own. He's going to continue to be one of the best playmakers in the NHL regular season. For sure. And again, playing with Philip Forsberg, who is to me a top-notch goal scorer in this league, I think it's a match made in heaven, to be honest.
Mitch, 10.9 mil, 1 year left on this deal. Then he's a UFA. Lots of things are going to go down this summer, Steele, especially with this Toronto Maple Leafs. Craig Berube is now behind the bench. Let's talk about it very quickly because also Sheldon Keefe is the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. The LA Kings keep Jim Hiller. Couple of fantasy fallouts from those moves, Steele. It's not just behind the bench. Those guys are going to have impacts on the ice, obviously impacting fantasy. We'll talk about that right after the break. Panthers, Rangers. The Bob shuts the door in game 1. What's it mean for game 2? I'm excited to hear what Steele has to say about that and his same game parlays. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's powerful hiring platform that helps you do it all. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Make sure you're checking out Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job at Indeed.com/lockedon. The offer's only good for a limited time. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go subscribe also to the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel. If you're still watching on Fox Sports or ESPN, you have to make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the hottest and biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in to our team's podcast, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every single day. Hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review, and like Flip said, make sure you go follow us on our brand new Instagram account, Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod. Flip's been absolutely killing it with the reels, the YouTube shorts. He's got the big time bets going up there. The graphics, they're absolutely insane. Please go follow us. We really do appreciate it. Over to, the coaching carousel in the NHL, though. Yeah. Like you said off the top, Craig Berube is the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sheldon Keefe is the head coach of the New Jersey Devils. And Jim Fuller? Is it Jim Fuller?
Jim Hiller.
Jim Hiller. I don't know why I said Fuller. Jim Hiller is re-signing with his team.
LA Kings.
After the LA Kings after coming in as the interim head coach after Todd McClellan was fired mid-season. So coaching carousel. Where do you want to start? You want to start with Sheldon Keefe? You want to start with Craig Berube? Where would you like to go?
I think just very quickly, this conversation can be had because, look, Jim Hiller, there's the one thing about the Kings. He was 21-12-1 when he came in. I don't think there's a ton to be said here other than, the players there. I think it was Kevin Fiala was in the media saying he doesn't like the way the Kings play that up the middle kind of a trappy style. I think they play the 1-3-1 or something weird. So things are going to change in LA in terms of how they're going to play on the ice. So I'm intrigued to see what that does for their fantasy value. We're going to have to wait on that one. Berube and Keefe is where I kind of would like to focus for obvious reasons. They connect to each other. But I think Sheldon Keefe has a very good opportunity here to make an impact with a good young New Jersey Devils team. I think this is going to mean really good things for the New Jersey Devils because also let's remember they were without Dougie Hamilton for most of the year. He's going to be back and fully healthy. Another year of Simon Nemec and Luke Hughes. He's inheriting a much better team than I think people are realizing, Steele. And I think given his, say what you will about the playoff inability to win, he got a lot out of his players in the regular season, career highs for Mitch, for Willie, all of these guys having great fantasy years under Keefe. I think this is going to be big, big news for the Brats, for the Hughes of the world. Is a coach going to come in and take your point total from 70 to 100? No. But I think Keefe is going to give those players even more opportunity, Steele, to eat more minutes, be the leaders on that team. And I think fantasy value goes up. I don't know what your fantasy take is on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great opportunity to see what Sheldon Keefe is made of because when he came into the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, the team was sort of already built to be a competitive and contender of a team, even though they struggled to get out of the first round. But in the regular season, they were a juggernaut. So, again, we talked about his coaching styles, and sometimes it really didn't matter because the team that he had in front of him would just get it done on the ice. So I think this is a good opportunity to coach a very, very, very young team, especially with Jack Hughes, Luke Hughes,
need a goalie,
Nemec, all those guys. Yeah, and that was the problem, especially last year, is their goaltender. I mean, even without Dougie Hamilton, I actually don't even know if Dougie Hamilton would have made that big of a difference to be a playoff
team point
because of the goaltending. Yeah, and that was a huge factor. So
Jake Allen they got at the deadline. He ain't the guy.
He's better than what they had the entire season. So
good backup. Good backup.
Good backup. But that is definitely something that the New Jersey Devils are going to have to do in the offseason is target a goaltender and acquire a goaltender. So that's number one for me. I think this is a good opportunity for Sheldon Keefe to show us what he really has and what he really has to show us behind the bench, especially with a new team. So, a huge fan of Sheldon Keefe. I wish him all the luck in the world. I hope he, has all the success that he can get with the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, when it comes to playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. I hope he fails. But other than that, I hope he has a tremendous amount of success in the NHL with the New Jersey Devils.
I agree, and I think he's actually a much better coach than what he's his boys hung him out to dry a couple of times. Let's just 100%. Leave it at that. So on to Berube very quickly, because we do want to spend some time on game 1 and 2 of that Eastern Conference final tonight. Game 2, Madison Square Garden. Steele, I think what's clear, though, just to bring it back to the Leafs and other teams that are done in this postseason, especially the ones that went out in the first round. I don't know how much of game 1 you watched. This level and intensity of hockey, the Toronto Maple Leafs and those other teams do not deserve to be here. They'd be chewed up and spit out. The Rangers and Florida Panthers are on a whole other level, is what I realized watching this game. It's intense. It's tough. At both ends of the ice, opportunities are shrinking. The Toronto Maple Leafs right now, how they're built, other teams as well, even the Nashville Predators, they would be absolutely swallowed up by these teams. So I'm very intrigued to see how game 1 shakes out in the Western Conference final. Berube, I think this is the right move, Steele, but for me, we can talk about it. It all has to happen with the roster. Could it have been McClellan? Could it have been another guy? Do I like Berube? I do. I like that he wants to play, heavy is what the quote was. It has to change on the roster. And I actually do think a shakeup like moving a Mitch Marner, as much as everybody's talking about it, it just makes sense. It's time to reset. The players in that locker room need a different energy, and that means new, fresh bodies. Berube is going to have to work with a different team. And until we see what that team is, Steele, I'm going to say this. Berube, it's nice, but the moves on the ice and with the roster are what I'm waiting to see before I really give my take on what this Toronto Maple Leafs team is going to be.
Yeah, that's the huge thing for me, and it really irritates me when all Leafs haters or all any a hockey fan out there pokes fun at the Maple Leafs. It's like, oh, like your team sucks. Like, this guy's not performing. This guy's the reason you guys lost. And then it's like, okay, as Leafs fan, we see the problem. We know it needs to change. And then when we want to change,
bad.
Move on. All those Leafs haters are like, oh, like run it back, go back to the core 4, like run it back with them, run it back. Like, why run it back when we know exactly what's going to happen again? We don't want that. So
they've already kept enough with keeping Shanahan. That's too much of the old regime. We got to turn house here.
So they definitely need to change things up, and that's why we talked about Mitch Marner off the top of the show. But moving forward with Craig Berube and the hiring, I really like it. I mean, there could have been a couple of other coaches they could have easily gone with, but I think Craig Berube is the right guy to go with. And I want to bring up a couple of quotes just to show what kind of coach the Maple Leafs are getting. And this is a quote from Golden Knights defenseman Alex Pietrangelo, who played for Craig Berube and won a cup with him. Anytime you have a team that's trying to get over the hump, you want someone to keep you accountable, and Craig Berube is going to do just that. He is that guy, and that's exactly what I want from a coach right now, is to hold their players accountable. And that brings me to my next quote right now from Craig Berube, where he says it was a post-game interview. I believe it was this past season or the year prior, and he got asked a question, and his quote was, "They're getting paid lots of money and they're not doing their job." End of story. That's the kind of coach I want behind the Leafs bench, who is going to hold his team accountable no matter how much money they're making. And if he has to bench a guy because he's playing poorly. If you have to ream them out on the bench or ream them out in the locker room, do so. But Craig Berube is that kind of coach that they need right now. And he won the Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues back in 2019, I believe. Since then, he still had a really good regular season record. He hasn't done too much since that Stanley Cup with the St. Louis Blues. But he is the exact type of coach that is going to hold this team accountable for their actions, for their play style, for how they're playing in the game on a nightly basis. And again, so I like the hiring. And again, right now, like you said, it's on the players to execute the plan of the coach.
Let's see what happens, because we haven't even hit June yet, Steele. By the way, Steele and I will be here all summer long. Episodes are going to get a little shorter. We're going to go down to 3 episodes a week in July and August, but that doesn't mean the prep for the draft season is going to slack or slouch. We will be here for all of your upcoming draft prep needs. Got to get the plug in, Steele. Game 1, Game 2, Eastern Conference Final, and same game parlays coming up right after the break. I'm ready when you are, brother.
Right after the break, as well as big time bets, Game 2 for the New York Rangers and Florida Panthers. But first, this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And you know I'm going with the Rangers Friday night on the money line, alluding to my same game parlay. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. We appreciate it. Make sure you hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Keep that love coming throughout the entire summer season, off the season. We just really appreciate all the support you guys show us out there. So thank you for all the love. We really do appreciate it. And we're going to continue the conversation recapping game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, teeing up game 2 of the Conference Finals. And Flip, I'm going to give it over to you in 1 second. But first, I will say, just because I think we have a opposite of opinion from game 1, I was rather bored with game 1, honestly, of the Eastern Conference Finals. Besides the first period where besides the first period where Matthew Tkachuk was laying out Vincent Trocheck a couple times, and some fast plays, some fast odd man rushes or breakaways. Other than that, I was quite bored. I'm going to be honest. I fell asleep halfway through the second period because it wasn't really hitting home.
I actually am not going to disagree. I guess what I more so meant is just the quality of chances, the intensity off the start. And it faded. But just that kind of level of compete, I don't see it in a lot of the teams that have already gone by the wayside, especially the teams that dropped out in the first round, like the New York Islanders against either of these teams right now. Ain't happening. So anyway, for sure, I'm with you. Matthew Tkachuk, just first and foremost, in 5 career Eastern Conference Final games, 5 goals, 4 game winners, 2 OT goals, 7 points, and 13 hits. He had 3 hits on Vincent Trocheck in the first period alone. I don't think he got any after that, and that maybe goes in the same vein as what you were saying. Maybe the game dropped off, and so did he. Matthew Tkachuk is a performer. He gets it done in the big time. He gets it done in the clutch, and he is most definitely, Steele, the prototypical player, aside from being the prototypical fantasy beast, the guy who you absolutely hate on the other team and would have 10 of his jerseys if you were a Florida Panthers fan. He is just that player. He embodies this entire team's style, Steele. When he plays with edge and he gets it done and he doesn't take dumb penalties, that's the line. That's Paul Maurice in a nutshell. He is the swagger that permeates this entire lineup. And when he goes like that, and Carter Verhaeghe's there to back him up, and you got Bob going, I know I've said this kind of about Dallas, and when they roll, this team is very hard to beat. I'll leave it at this before I throw it over to you. Game 2 is going to be a very different story tonight. And I think a 3-0 score is actually not indicative of how close this game is. The Rangers hit a number of posts. There was a muffin allowed by Shesterkin. That was 2, and then an empty netter. So it was 1-0 for most of this game. And it could have gone either way, I think. For most of that game, it could have gone either way. It was 1-0 to 7 minutes down in the third. Then they get a muffin and then an empty netter.
Okay, so that's why I made the face at. It wasn't a muffin. Lafreniere tipped it into his own net.
I shouldn't say muffin. It was a bounce. It wasn't a nice goal. How about that? Is that better?
Yeah, it wasn't a nice goal, but it's very hard to stop a puck when your own player deflects it into your crease when he's like a foot away from the net. I'm being critical.
Right now. However, the point holds true. I think it could have been a much different story. I know that's part of playoff hockey. Bobrovsky is a shutout, but he had 18 saves. The New York Rangers are going to have to generate a lot more chances if they want to get past this Panthers club.
27 to 23 shots on goal in favor for the Florida Panthers. I mean, when you look at the stats from both teams, there's only one category where it's really lopsided, and that's where it goes with me, because you're right. This was a lot closer of a game than what the score shows. A lot of posts on the New York Rangers side, a lot of good stops from both goaltenders. But the one indicative number or category that is a really lopsided was the turnovers. 12-2 in turnovers for the New York Rangers.
Good point.
And a lot of them came from FLA-NYR, who I've really been happy with so far this postseason. And that was actually the deflection goal on the second goal of the game, was from FLA-NYR, where it hit his stick in front of Shesterkin. But I mean, they very costly turnovers. I know it was only a 3-0 game, but if you turn over the puck, you're going to create odd man chances. You're going to create scoring opportunities for the opposition. And that's exactly what happened in game 1 for the Florida Panthers, being able to turn over the puck from the New York Rangers. So, I mean, I'm expecting a barn burner of a game in game 2. A lot, not scoring wise, but, you know, physicality wise, intensity wise, atmosphere wise, it's going to be a lot different in game 2.
I think one of the other angles that I kind of looked at throughout this whole postseason, and I think it's probably right there on the same page with special teams and winning on the road, is who wins the battles on the dot. And they actually were losing too many faceoffs. And I just wanted to, I think I want to pull that number up. Yeah. So they 48% on the dot for the Rangers to 51 for the Florida Panthers. Not a huge discrepancy, but when you look at how much they were winning draws in the first couple of rounds, Trocheck, Wenberg, and Zibanejad up the middle, if they start losing these puck battles, Steele, which they were kind of winning a ton of, especially in the dot, this is going to be a different series than what you and I expected. And I know it's one game. There's going to be a response from the Rangers tonight. I'm not trying to get down any kind of crazy path in terms of them being cooked. But if they keep playing like that in game 1, this isn't rocket science. They're not going to win this series playing like that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough series. And you alluded to that when we were doing our Eastern Conference Finals about how tough this Florida Panthers team. And you proved it. You proved them right and proved me wrong because of how they played in game 1. I thought exactly what the Rangers were going to be able to do was going to be match that intensity. And they did not in game 1. They're going to have to bounce back in a huge way. Let's get over to big time bets, though, where the money is made. We both got same game parlays because there's only one game on the schedule for Friday night. Flip, over to you. What's your same game parlay?
Verhaeghe had 5 shots in that game. You know how much I love Carter Verhaeghe.
Love this guy.
The fact that I'm getting minus 180 for 3+ shots, and this is a same game parlay, so I'm going to build up my odds a little bit. I'm okay taking the juice. This guy's going to get 3 or 4 shots, no problem. So let's go Carter Verhaeghe, 3+ shots at minus 180. I'm going under again. I have a feeling this is going to be very, very close all series long, and it's not rocket science again. This is postseason hockey, and I think you're going to see a response from the Rangers again. Not a bold take, but that means Shesterkin's going to tighten it up. So under 5.5, that's actually would have been my lock of the night, but then I'm loving the no goal in the first 5 minutes, and I was thinking about no goal in the first 10 minutes. You have to really take a lot of juice for the first 5, but when you're parlaying them with the other 2, you're still going to get about a plus 200, so I'm loving that. Verhaeghe, 3+ shots, under 5.5, lock of the night, no goal in the first 5 minutes. I think it's going to be something dumb like minus 240 Steele, but put him with the other 2. It'll be like plus 250. That's free loot, those 3.
Free loot indeed from Flip. I mean, the guy's absolutely been killing it with the same game parlay. He's been killing it all week with the FanDuel bets anyways, but I've got same game parlay as well from this matchup. I'm going to bring them up in 1 second, but I've got them on my screen. First pick of the night. I'm with you in the taking the under. It's going to be a low scoring game. It's going to be close games.
I think so.
I'm going to take the under 5.5 at minus 128 for my first pick. I believe I picked the over in game 1, and just did not go that way, obviously. But I'm going to go with the under 5.5 at minus 128 for my first pick. Second pick, I'm going with the Rangers on the money line at minus 108. They're going to bounce back in a huge way at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, I mean, I picked them for a reason to win the Stanley Cup, so I got to go with them no matter what, especially to tie this up. I mean, I just don't believe they're going to go down 0-2 at home, even though the Florida Panthers are a very, very strong home team. Away team.
Road team.
So that's my first 2 pick. Rangers on the money line at minus 104, under 5.5 at minus 28. And I'm going with the Chris Kreider anytime goal for my third pick at plus 210. You add all of those 3 together, you're going to get an odd of plus 900. I'm going with Kreider anytime goal for my lock of the night. And I think that's exactly what the Rangers need to change up a little bit going into game 2 is they need to be in the grill of Sergei Bobrovsky. They got to make it uncomfortable for him.
Most definitely.
They got to make sure that he's getting rattled. And what does Chris Kreider do best? Going to the net and disturbing and irritating the goaltenders that he's right there in the blue paint almost. Obviously, don't take a goaltender interference, but make sure you're irritating the goaltenders. I think Chris Kreider is going to play a wonderful game too, and that's going to be my lock of the night. Kreider anytime goal at +210.
Look, it's going to be a battle. Madison Square Garden, Matthew Tkachuk, you can tell he's getting some advice from Pops or from somebody talking about that intense level of, compete, and just the barn was rocking. I'm so excited for tonight. This is the time of year as a hockey fan that you're sometimes butthurt and you sometimes want to check out because your team got burned. You've been watching a lot of hockey. There's golf on. There's other sports to follow. This year, Steele, I'm right in on every single game. You have the 4 best teams in the league. You could argue about maybe Edmonton, but the other 3 are the 3 best teams in the league. And that rarely happens. And I'm actually tapped right into every single game of both series because I think it's just going to be great hockey. You fell asleep. I don't blame you. Second and third period got snoozy until the end of the third. So let's hope for a better game 2 in terms of a full 60 minutes of intense playoff action. We'll be back for a Saturday special tomorrow, Steele.
Tapped in and locked into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. They are here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow for the Saturday Special.
Peace.